Something extraordinary is happening right now in Jerusalem. Something that has been dormant for 2,000 years. Something that could change everything we thought we knew about biblical prophecy and the end times. I'm standing here in the heart of the holy city, and I can tell you that what I witnessed today sent chills down my spine. The air itself seemed to vibrate with ancient power. The very stones of Jerusalem appeared to cry out with voices that have been silent since the days of Jesus Christ himself. You need to hear this. You need to understand what's unfolding before our very eyes, because this isn't just another news story. This isn't just another archaeological discovery. This is biblical prophecy manifesting in real time, and we are witnesses to it. For nearly 2 millennia, the Temple Mount has remained under Gentile control, just as Jesus prophesied when he said Jerusalem would be trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Luke chapter 21, verse 24. Those words have echoed through history for 2,000 years, and today, something shifted. Charlie Kirk, the prominent conservative voice who has been silenced by mainstream media time and time again, found himself at the center of what can only be described as a divine orchestration. But this isn't about politics. This isn't about left versus right. This is about something far greater than any earthly kingdom or political movement. What happened on the Temple Mount today broke a silence that has lasted since the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. Think about that for a moment. 70 AD. When Roman legions under Titus destroyed Solomon's temple and scattered the Jewish people to the four winds, fulfilling Christ's prophecy that not one stone would be left upon another. But today, something awakened. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine this scene. The golden dome of the rock gleaming under the Jerusalem sun. The western wall below, where thousands of prayers have been whispered into ancient stones. The Mount of Olives rising in the distance, where Jesus himself stood and wept over the city. This is the epicenter of human history. This is where heaven touches earth. And in this sacred space, where Abraham offered Isaac, where Solomon built the first temple, where Jesus cleansed the temple courts and proclaimed himself Lord of the Sabbath, something unprecedented occurred. The memorial service wasn't planned by any earthly authority. It seemed to emerge from the very stones themselves, as if the city of David was calling out to be remembered. As if the ancient covenant was stirring to life once more. Charlie Kirk, who has faced censorship and silencing for speaking truth to power, found himself becoming a vessel for something far beyond his own understanding. He wasn't there as a political commentator. He wasn't there as a media personality. He was there as a witness to the unfolding of divine timing. Can you feel it? Can you sense that we're living in extraordinary times? The prophet Daniel spoke of the time of the end, when knowledge would increase and many would run to and fro. Look around you. We live in an age of instant communication, where a single video can reach millions in minutes. We live in an age where ancient prophecies can be fulfilled and broadcast to the entire world in real time. The memorial service began with the sound of the shofar. That ancient ram's horn that has called God's people to attention for over 3,000 years. The same instrument that brought down the walls of Jericho. The same sound that will herald the return of the King of Kings. As that haunting, powerful blast echoed across the Temple Mount, something in the spiritual realm shifted. I could see it in the eyes of every person present. Jew and Gentile alike. Muslim and Christian. Something ancient was awakening, and we were all witnesses to it. The silence that had lasted 2,000 years was being broken not by armies or politicians, but by the simple act of remembrance. By the power of worship. By the recognition that this ground, this holy ground, remains sacred regardless of who claims earthly authority over it. But here's what made this moment truly extraordinary. As Charlie Kirk began to speak, not with his usual political fervor, but with a reverence I've never heard from him before, the very air seemed to change. His words weren't about conservative values or liberal bias. They were about covenant. They were about promise. They were about the faithfulness of God across millennia. He spoke of the prophets who walked these very stones. Isaiah, who saw the Lord high and lifted up. Jeremiah, who wept over the coming destruction. Ezekiel, who saw the glory of the Lord depart from the temple and prophesied of its return. These weren't ancient stories anymore. They were living testimonies to the faithfulness of a God who keeps his promises across generations. Do you understand what you're witnessing? Do you comprehend the magnitude of this moment? We're not just watching history unfold. We're watching prophecy fulfill itself before our very eyes. The book of Revelation speaks of 7 trumpets that will sound in the last days. 7 announcements of God's final plan for humanity. And I want you to consider this. What if the shofar that sounded today on the Temple Mount was more than just a memorial? What if it was an announcement? What if it was heaven's way of saying that the countdown has begun? Jesus himself said that this generation would not pass away until all things are fulfilled. He spoke of signs in the heavens and on the earth. Wars and rumors of wars. Nation rising against nation. And all of these as birth pains, growing stronger and more frequent as the time approaches. Look at our world today. Look at the convergence of events. Israel back in the land after 2,000 years of exile. Jerusalem under Jewish control for the first time since the Roman destruction. Technology that makes global communication instantaneous. Signs in the heavens that amateur astronomers can photograph from their backyards. But most significantly, look at what happened today. Look at how a memorial service became a prophetic announcement. Look at how the silence of 2 millennia was broken not by conquest, but by worship. The Jewish people have a saying. Next year in Jerusalem. For 2,000 years, scattered across the globe, persecuted and exiled, they've ended their Passover celebrations with those words. Next year in Jerusalem. It was hope. It was faith. It was the belief that one day, they would return to the land of promise. And now they have. The dry bones that Ezekiel saw in his vision have come together. Sinew and flesh have formed upon them. The breath of life has entered them, and they stand as an exceedingly great army. But today's memorial service represents something even deeper. It represents the convergence of Jewish hope and Christian expectation. Because while the Jewish people await their Messiah's first coming, we who follow Christ await his return. And both expectations center on the same location, Jerusalem. The same mountain, Mount Zion. The same promise, the restoration of God's kingdom on earth. Charlie Kirk, in his moment of silence broken, became a bridge between these two streams of faith. His voice, so often raised in political discourse, was hushed in reverence as he recognized that he stood on ground that is holy to both traditions. Ground that will one day see the fulfillment of every prophetic word ever spoken over it. Can you imagine what it must have felt like to stand there? To look out over the city where Jesus walked, where he was crucified, where he rose from the dead, and where he will return. To stand where David danced before the ark, where Solomon prayed at the temple's dedication, where Isaiah received his vision of the Holy One of Israel. The memorial service wasn't just remembering the past. It was prophesying the future. Because every act of worship on that mountain is a declaration that God's promises are sure. Every prayer whispered into those ancient stones is an acknowledgement that the story isn't over yet. And that's why this matters to you. That's why you can't just watch this video and go back to your normal routine. Because if God is faithful to his promises to Israel, he's faithful to his promises to you. If he can bring a scattered nation back to their land after 2,000 years, he can fulfill every word he's spoken over your life. The same God who promised Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars, who promised David that his throne would be established forever, who promised through the prophets that Jerusalem would be a praise in all the earth, this same God has promises for you that are just as sure, just as certain, just as guaranteed to come to pass. But there's urgency here. There's a reason this is happening now. There's a reason the silence is being broken in our generation. Jesus said we should watch for the signs of his return, and he gave us specific things to look for. The restoration of Israel. The rebuilding of Jerusalem. The gospel being preached to all nations. The increase of lawlessness. The love of many growing cold. Look around you. Check off that list. How many of those signs do you see manifesting in our world today? How many of those prophecies are being fulfilled in real time, broadcast live, shared instantly across the globe. The memorial service today wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. It was heaven's way of saying that the final act is about to commence. That the curtain is rising on the greatest drama in human history. That the king is returning to claim his throne. And you have a choice to make. You can dismiss this as coincidence. You can explain it away as political theater or religious enthusiasm. You can go back to your daily routine and pretend that nothing significant happened on the Temple Mount today. Or you can recognize that you're living in the most extraordinary time in human history. You can acknowledge that God is moving in ways He hasn't moved for millennia. You can prepare your heart for what's coming. Because make no mistake, something is coming. The silence is broken. The countdown has begun. And every day that passes brings us closer to the moment when every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. The question isn't whether these things will happen. The question is whether you'll be ready when they do. This is your wake-up call. This is your invitation to vigilance. This is your moment to choose which side of history you want to be on when the final trumpet sounds and the king returns to reclaim his city. Don't let this moment pass you by. Don't dismiss what you've witnessed today. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the same yesterday, today, and forever. His promises are sure. His timing is perfect. And His return is imminent. The silence is broken. The memorial has become a prophecy. And you are a witness to the unfolding of the greatest story ever told. What will you do with what you've seen? How will you respond to this moment of divine intervention in human history? The choice is yours, but the time for choosing is now. Because the King is coming, and His kingdom will have no end. What happened in the hours following that memorial service changed everything. As word spread through Jerusalem's ancient streets, something unprecedented began to unfold. The silence that had been broken wasn't just ceremonial. It was prophetic. And the ripple effects are still reverberating across the globe. I need to tell you what I witnessed as the sun began to set over the holy city. Because what started as a memorial became something far more significant. Something that biblical scholars are calling the most important prophetic sign in 2 millennia. The crowds that gathered weren't organized by any earthly authority. They came from every corner of Jerusalem. Orthodox Jews from Mea Shearim. Arab Christians from the Old City. Tourists who had planned simple pilgrimages but found themselves witnessing history. They all felt the same pull, the same irresistible call to be present for whatever was unfolding. Charlie Kirk, still visibly shaken by what had transpired earlier, found himself surrounded not by political supporters or media crews, but by people seeking answers to questions they couldn't even articulate. The man who built his reputation on having ready responses to every political debate was speechless in the face of divine orchestration. But here's what made this moment truly unprecedented. As evening approached and the call to prayer echoed from minarets across the city, something extraordinary happened at the western wall. The ancient stones began to weep. Not metaphorically. Literally. Water began seeping from cracks in the wall that had been dry for centuries. Scientists will try to explain it away. They'll talk about underground springs and pressure changes and geological phenomena. But everyone who was there knew they were witnessing something that transcended natural law. The stones themselves were crying out, just as Jesus had prophesied they would. The Orthodox Jews who pray at the wall daily had never seen anything like it. These are men who have memorized every crack, every crevice, every shadow cast by those ancient blocks. They know when something has changed. And what they witnessed today challenged everything they thought they understood about the sacred and the supernatural. But the weeping stones were just the beginning. As darkness fell over Jerusalem, reports began coming in from across Israel. From the Sea of Galilee to the Mediterranean coast. From the Negev desert to the mountains of the Golan Heights. Something was stirring in the land itself. Farmers reported that springs thought to be permanently dry were flowing again. Shepherds called in from the Judean wilderness to say that their flocks were behaving strangely, all turning toward Jerusalem and bleating in unison, as if responding to some inaudible call. Even more remarkable were the reports from Jewish communities around the world. From Brooklyn to Buenos Aires, from London to Los Angeles, from Moscow to Melbourne. Orthodox communities that maintain no regular communication with each other were reporting identical visions. Dreams of the temple being rebuilt. Prophetic utterances in Hebrew from children who had never learned the language. This is what the prophet Joel meant when he said that in the last days, God would pour out His Spirit on all flesh. That sons and daughters would prophesy. That young men would see visions and old men would dream dreams. Charlie Kirk, trained in political analysis and media strategy, found himself completely unprepared for the spiritual dimensions of what was unfolding. But perhaps that was precisely the point. Perhaps God chose to use someone from the secular world of politics and media to demonstrate that His kingdom transcends human categories and expectations. As Kirk stood among the growing crowd at the Temple Mount, no longer the confident commentator but a humbled witness to divine intervention, he began to understand something profound about the nature of prophecy. It's not about predicting the future. It's about recognizing God's hand in the present moment and having the courage to bear witness to it. The memorial service had become a catalyst. Like a stone thrown into still water, the ripples were expanding in every direction. Social media exploded with videos and testimonies from Jerusalem. #Broken Silence began trending worldwide. But more significantly, churches across America began reporting unprecedented numbers of people seeking prayer and spiritual guidance. This is the convergence the Apostle Paul wrote about. The time when the fullness of the Gentiles would come in, and all Israel would be saved. We're witnessing the orchestration of divine timing that has been 2,000 years in the making. But let me tell you what concerns me most about this moment. It's not the supernatural phenomena. It's not the prophetic implications. It's the response I'm seeing from so many people who should be paying attention but are choosing to look away. The mainstream media is either ignoring these events entirely or trying to explain them in purely naturalistic terms. Religious leaders who should be sounding the alarm are worried about appearing too enthusiastic or too dramatic. Politicians are calculating how these developments might affect their approval ratings rather than recognizing the eternal significance of what's happening. Jesus wept over Jerusalem because the people didn't recognize the time of their visitation. Are we making the same mistake? Are we so focused on our earthly concerns that we're missing the greatest spiritual awakening in human history? The silence has been broken, but many are choosing to remain deaf to what heaven is declaring. The signs are multiplying, but many are choosing to keep their eyes closed to what God is revealing. The call to readiness is sounding, but many are choosing to hit the snooze button on their spiritual alarm clocks. This can't be just another video you watch and forget. This can't be just another story that entertains you for 15 minutes and then disappears into your social media feed. Because what's happening right now is the fulfillment of promises made before the foundation of the world. God is not finished with Jerusalem. He's not finished with Israel. And He's not finished with you. The same power that brought the Jewish people back to their land after 2,000 years of exile is available to transform your life today. The same faithfulness that preserved His people through persecution and diaspora is working in your circumstances right now. But you have to choose to see it. You have to choose to believe it. You have to choose to act on it. Because the time for passive observation is over. The time for casual Christianity is finished. The time for lukewarm faith has ended. The King is coming, and His kingdom is breaking into our reality in ways we've never seen before. The silence is broken, and heaven is speaking. The question is whether you're listening. Don't wait until tomorrow to surrender your life completely to Jesus Christ. Don't wait until next week to start taking prophecy seriously. Don't wait until next month to begin preparing your heart for His return. The memorial service is over, but the awakening has just begun. And you're not just watching history unfold. You're being invited to participate in the greatest story ever told. The King is coming. Are you ready?